What's up guys, Rybombee teacher in the house, and I am here with my PUL team builder for my week 2 match. Your Royal Bournemouth Ribombees are taking on Coach Rozzy of the Denver Dusknoirs in a very hard week 2 matchup. If you're not sure why I'm saying week 2 instead of week 1, please go check out my draft analysis down below. You'll find out why I didn't play my week 1 match. But yeah, let's just get into it. He has a very, very scary team. I will like to point this out. When I first looked at this team when I drafted, I'm just like, well, how the hell am I supposed to beat that? He's got a very offensive team. Starting off with that Mega Charizard X, very hard-hitting physical wall breaker. Typically can also be special, but often is not because it doesn't get any special setup. Typically with Charizard X, you tend to see any combination of Dragon Dance, Flare Blitz, Earthquake, Roost, Dragon Claw, Outrage, any of those moves. He might bring Rock Slide this week because I have a Volcarona. He could also potentially bring things like Thunder Punch for Swallow. I don't expect that to come, but he could potentially bring it. Does also get Defog, which I'll talk a bit more about hazard removal a little bit later because there is obviously Mega Sableye on my team, so I don't think he's going to be too keen on setting hazards up himself. Next up is Keldeo. Typically a special breaker. It has two main sets that it normally runs. It can be a Calm Mind offensive set or a spec set. If he's a Calm Mind set, it typically runs Scald over Hydro Pump for the extra reliability and the burn chance. Secret Sword is obviously a signature fighting type move and can occasionally run Taunt to prevent things like setup, can prevent defoggers, and can also potentially prevent hazard setup. If he's a spec set, he typically runs double Water Stab with Hydro Pump and Scald, with Secret Sword again and Icy Wind to slow down things that are naturally faster than his. However, he has a problem. If he runs either of these two sets, he is outsped by my Alolan Raichu and my Swellow. My Alolan Raichu one-shots it with either Psychic or Thunderbolt, and my Swellow can potentially one-shot with Hurricane. Boomburst two-shots it if I'm running a spec set. Brave Bird potentially one-shot after a Guts boost. So he might have to bring Scarf Keldeo this week to try and outspeed either of them. Could potentially also run Toxic for things like Slowbro, which otherwise pretty much walls Keldeo. Keldeo doesn't get the best options to beat it. Could also potentially run Waterium Z to try and handle my Clefable, because Clefable also can have a pretty safe switch in to Keldeo as well. Speaking of Scarfers, his more likely Scarf in my opinion is Kartana. Typically Kartana can be Scarf or Banded, can also be Normalium Z Giga Impact, but Kartana kind of faces the same problem as it gets outsped by things like my Alolan Raichu, my Swellow, and also my Salazzle. Outspeeds Kartana. Salazzle one-shots with any fire move, with Kartana's absolutely awful Spadef stat. Even things like Raichu can one-shot. My Raichu, of course, gets Focus Blast, which can murder it, and also Swallow gets Heat Wave, which can murder it, so he might run this set Scarf, hoping that I don't run a Scarfer. Typically, if you are running Scarf or Bandit Kartana, you usually run Leaf Blade, Sacred Sword, Knockoff, and Smart Strike. This is generally his widest move pool for decent coverage options and a bit of utility with Knockoff. So, next up on his team is Nidoking. Very hard-hitting wall breaker on both the physical and the special side. Typically you see him on the special side because of moves that get hit boosted by Sheer Force. Sheer Force buffs up moves that have a secondary effect while taking away their secondary effect. For example, moves like Sludge Wave get stronger but you don't have the chance to poison anymore. Things like that. Buff that up with a Life Orb as well, and Life Orb recoil is also negated by the Sheer Force. Typically, set-wise, it runs Sludge Wave Earth Power for its dual stab. Can run any number of coverage moves in things like Ice Beam, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt. I think he more likely brings Thunderbolt this week because of Slowbro and Swallow and those kind of problems. Could also bring Flamethrower for Ferrothorn. Usually its last move's kind of up in the air. It does get Stealth Rock and Toxic Spikes. It can also get Sub to prevent any Will-O-Wisp shenanigans from things like my Sableye or my Dusclops. Nidoking's kind of got an average speed tier at base 85 speed, so can be often quite easily outsped and one-shot. My team doesn't really have the fastest of speed tiers though, so that is something to bear in mind. Next up is Mandibuzz, very bulky, fat pivot Pokemon, gets a lot of utility moves, things like Defog, Taunt, Toxic, Roost, also gets Knockoff and U-Turn. Doesn't really offer a lot of offensive pressure. Does get foul play, however, though, so can prevent things like setup on my team. Usually, item-wise, it takes a Leftovers or Rocky Helmet to pair up with Overcoat. It can also be a little bit troll with a weak armor set, but I don't think he brings it against me because I have a Rhyperior, which absolutely decimates Mandibuzz. Next up is Mesprit, offers a ground immunity, thanks to its levitate ability. It's got a very, very wide move pool with a decent well-rounded stats with 105 in every stat bar, HP and speed. Gets coverage moves like Blizzard, a Dazzling Gleam, Energy Ball, Ice Beam, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Signal Beam. Gets a lot of different options. Typically, I've seen it run as a Sash lead set in a hyper-offensive team with things like Rocks, Explosion, Taunt, plus coverage move. I don't think he brings that though because I do have a Mega Sableye and a Dusclops, which are both immune to Explosion. So I don't think he brings that. I think he's more likely to bring a potential spec set with multiple coverage options to try and break through my team as fast as possible. Oh. Next up is Cofagrigus, probably one of the biggest deterrents to Trick Room. It also sets up Trick Room itself, particularly physically bulky, really fat Pokemon, gets things like Nasty Plot, Will-O-Wisp, and a couple of coverage moves and Psychic and Energy Ball. Doesn't get the best coverage though, and is often weak to priority moves. Unfortunately, I no longer have Bishop on this team, which would have been great against Cofagrigus, but either way, hey, I can potentially beat it in Trick Room anyway because I have hard-hitting Pokemon that can actually handle it. Sableye also handles it relatively well, so looks pretty promising on here. Next up is Hitmontop, probably a very unlikely bring this week. Typically it's a rapid spinner, does get a cool move in Foresight though, so I can't necessarily spin block with Sableye and Dusclops. But Hitmontop really lacks any form of damage output. Like, it has an okay stab move in close combat, but other than that, it doesn't really hit very hard. So, does have a cool ability with Intimidate though to potentially cripple attacking threats like my Rhyperior on the switch-in. But other than that, it doesn't really offer too much to his team, so I don't think Hitmontop comes this week. Next up is Comfy, I think a very likely bring this week because I have Sableye. Has the triage ability, so moves that give you healing, such as Draining Kiss and Giga Drain, those kind of moves actually get priority, which can be really, really obnoxious, especially handling my Sableye. Giga Drain actually does a number on things like my Rhyperior. Typically, you sometimes see it as a Carmine late-game sweeper set, but it's pretty weak on the physical defensive side, so if I can exploit it with things like coverage options on Rhyperior, for example, we have a pretty good chance of handling pretty well. Can often be forced out by Steel types as well. I do have a Ferrothorn on my team, which might dissuade the Comfy from coming. And might not, though, because I do have to be careful around Hidden Power Fire. If he can even fit that on a Comfy set. Next up is Spiritomb. Again, potential bring, but I'm not 100% convinced it comes. Has the same really good defensive typing that Sableye has. Often you sometimes see it as a good pursuit trapper because it has the ability Infiltrator, which bypasses things like Substitute. Also bypasses screens as well. Other than that, it tends to be a sometimes pressure stall set. Can also be a Trick Room sweeper because it gets access to Carmine. But Spiritomb, unlike other Carmine users, doesn't have the coverage options to actually make a Carmine set work. It only really gets Dark Pulse and Shadow Ball. Oh. Last on his team is Rotom Frost. Pretty offensive Rotom. Decent pivot. Gets things like Blizzard, Volt Switch, Defog. Gets, obviously, Thunderbolt, of course. Sometimes gets a little bit of utility with Will-O-Wisp and Pain Split. Does also get Trick, so it can potentially cripple one of my defensive Pokemon. But I'm not sure about Rotom Frost, whether it comes or not. It is weak to Stealth Rocks, does get blown back by Fire Moves. I have quite a lot of Pokemon on my team that gets Fire Moves. And can be pretty easy to wear down and fairly easy to force out. In terms of hazards and hazard removal on his team, he has 2 Stealth Rockers in the form of Nidoking and Mesprit. He has no Spike Setters. He has 2 Toxic Spike Setters in Nidoking and Cofagrigus. He has no web setters, and he has plenty of removal with Defog in Charizard, Kartana, Mandibuzz, Comfey, and Rotom, and a single Rapid Spinner in Hitmontop. Excuse me. So, let's talk about my team, what I'm bringing, why I am bringing it, shall we? So, let me find my team real quick. You can probably guess the first Pokemon on my team, as you can see the moves and the abilities all on my screen over above me and to my right. Right, but to your left, of course. First Pokemon on my team is going to be a Lowland Raichu. It's going to be a Swansea, of course, named after the Swansea Surge Surfers and my friend Anistria. Rocking a spec set this week. I'm taking the gamble that the Keldeo is not going to be scarfed. I think Kartana is more likely, as I said earlier. With specs, Psychic and Thunderbolt guaranteed one-shot any form of Keldeo, unless it's unlikely the event of being Assault Vest. Volt Switch, of course, for pivoting out. Focus Blast one-shots Kartana. Focus Blast also does a number on things like the Mandibuzz that can sometimes switch in. Unlikely, of course, but you never know. Oh, this set is generally designed just to wear his team down, scare some of his team out, and pivot out as and when I need to. Next up is most likely going to be my late game cleaner. It also wins outside of Trick Room. Pokemon like Swellow. So, Swellow, Aerosmith on my team. I'm running a excuse me, Scarf set, which might seem a little bit odd because Swellow's speed is already quite fast. But with Swellow being scarfed, Keldeo can't outspeed it, Kartana can't outspeed it, regardless of the situation. And of course, both of them get hit by massive damage from Air Slash and Boomburst, respectively. Heat Wave also blows back Kartana. Boomburst is extremely spammable against his team. U-turn's there just to pivot out if I feel like I'm in a rather bad situation. I don't tend to expect to see it come. To that, this is mostly designed to come in late game and try and win the game for me. I'm hoping that Raichu can wear his team down and Swellow can come in and finish off. Next up's going to be the Breaker Beyond Breakers for my team, and it's going to be Rhyperior. Rhyperior solid as a Brock, as I call him. I am actually going to change this to Assault Vest as opposed to Choice Band. I was playing around with both of these sets, but I found Assault Vest to be a little bit more reliable because it allows me to live a hit from Comfey if he brings it. And rocking the Fire Punch, Stone Edge, Earthquake, Poison Jab with a solid rock ability, meaning I take 3/4 of damage from super effective hits instead of the 4 damage. Running the Brave Nature this week because of the next Pokemon that I'm going to talk about. This thing's pretty bulky, hits incredibly hard, does break through a lot of his team. Not really anything on his team wants to switch in on a Stone Edge, or potentially an Earthquake. Poison Jab is there for Comfey in case it switches in. Poison Jab actually 2-shots Comfey even after a Giga Drain. Fire Punch is mostly there for Kartana, of course. Does also hit the Rotom Frost if it tries to switch in. But yeah, I quite like this Pokemon quite a lot. Hopefully this is going to do a lot of work this match. Next Pokemon is actually a Pokemon that just came onto my team, and it's going to be Slowbro. Originally this was Ferrothorn. I'll talk about more why I chose not to bring Ferrothorn in a minute. Rocking the Iapapa Barrier with Trick Room. This is to allow Pokemon like my Rhyperior to come in and smash his team to bits. And this gives Rhyperior a bit of an easy time breaking because Rhyperior is quite slow. Scald and Psychic, of course, dual stab, does hit a lot of his team. Psychic actually 2-shots Keldeo at this point. Slack off, of course, for additional recovery. We're running Fully Spadef. This is to allow me to guarantee take hits from things like the Keldeo. It does also take a Thunderbolt from Nidoking really well. Can take coverage moves from things like the Mesprit and the Comfey as well. Well, next on the list is, of course, Hazard Deterrent in Chief, my Mega Sableye Mirror. Running a physically bulky set this week with Fake Out, Foul Play, Recover, Toxic. Fake Out is there in case he runs a Sash Lead Mesprit. This just to prevent him from setting up early Stealth Rocks. Recover, Toxic. Basically, his Sableye's job is to come in and take a couple of hits, wear his team down, and then switch back out. Foul Play actually is pretty nice for Dragon Dance Charizard because after a Dragon Dance, Foul Play actually one-shots Charizard after Stealth Rocks, which is important to know. Well, so if I can bounce back Stealth Rocks from his team, he does have a couple of rockers. Whether he chooses to bring it or not, who knows. But this job is basically to bounce back any hazards and kind of wear his team down while taking hits respectively. And last but by no means least on my team is going to be my Clefable Moonshine. I'm rocking Unaware this week. This is, of course, is to prevent anything from like Carmine Keldeo or Dragon Dance Zardex to come in. Also for Nasty Plot on Caphagrigus. This set's basically designed to come in, chip off a little bit of damage with Moonblast, and pretty much provide wish support for things like my Rhyperior that doesn't get recovery on its own. Also provides Stealth Rock for my team if I can't bounce back rocks for whatever reason. And Heal Bell's just there as a utility move, so any Toxics or any burns that are on my team I can just wear off. Running Spadef this week as it handles things like the Mesprit and the Nidoking a little bit better. So yeah, that's my team for this week. Let's talk about Pokemon that didn't make it. Dusknoirs almost made it onto my team as my Trick Room setter, but I felt like Slowbro took hits a little bit more defensively, as well as being able to do more offensively against my opponent's team. Ferrothorn was originally on my team as a comfy deterrent, but I felt like Ferrothorn didn't necessarily offer too much other than beating Comfy, because Keldeo gets fighting moves which actually two-shots Ferrothorn even if it's fully Spadef. And obviously the prevalence of things like Fire Move with the Zardex, things like Flamethrower from Nidoking and Fire Moves from Mesprit. There are too many things that Ferrothorn can't really deal with on his team, so I decided not to bring Ferrothorn this week. I think Salazzle almost came this week as my Kartana answer, but Salazzle just doesn't really live any hits from some of his team. Mesprit can kind of destroy it. It doesn't really break through enough unless I run Z-Move, which I didn't feel like had the best matchup against his team. But other than that, yeah, those are the only other ones that I really considered coming onto my team. So yeah, that's going to be my team builder. The battle has not quite happened yet as I'm recording this. It should happen sometime soon though, so I'll hopefully get that battle soon for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are new. My name is Ribombee Teacher, and I will see you guys next time.